Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I am Rena, and welcome to
Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode titled Introduction, Who Are We and What Are We Doing?
Sarah. What movie are we doing this week?
Calling it a movie is a very generous and broad use of the term. This week, we will be talking about the movie Wired, based on Bob Woodward's book of the same name, starring Michael Chiklis as John Belushi.
And we have a guest this week.
We sure do. We are welcoming back Liam McEnany. Just to give you a little bio on him, he began doing stand-up comedy at the age of 19, and by 20, he was touring professionally. His credits include television appearances across multiple networks, and most recently, his 2025 special, West Coasting, which is available for rent or sale at Comedy Dynamics. As a writer, his work has appeared in the comic anthology True Porn 2 and publications including Maxim, Drill, Jest, and The American Bystander. In addition, his freelance comedy writing work ranges from contributing to SNL's Weekend Update segment to comedy videos for Fortune 100 companies. As a filmmaker, he is a graduate of USC's prestigious School of Cinematic Arts. He produced and starred in Tell Your Friends, the concert film, which held its premiere at the 2011 South by Southwest Film Festival. His screenplays have placed multiple times in prestigious competitions, including the Atlanta Film Festival twice, Final Draft's Big Break twice, and the Academy Nickel 2 times. He also has a Substack, writeliam.com, and you can also visit watchliam.com for his special, and we'll post all of that in the show notes. But welcome back to the show, Liam.
Welcome back, Liam. You. It's been too long.
Hey, it has been too long. And
yeah, it really has.
I'm actually really excited to talk about Wired. I was excited to watch it.
How are you feeling about that now?
I'm very excited to talk about it. There's a lot to break down, starting with the fact that the thrash metal band Anthrax told the same story in 4.5 minutes in a song called NFL. Much better.
Was Bob Woodward there to tell you, to gasp and clutch his pearls about people doing drugs?
No, weirdly, they just stuck to the facts, and it took 4.5 minutes, and it was great.
Why do that if you can play pinball with Ray Sharkey for your life? I don't know. Just throwing some ideas out here that seem to work really well in someone's idea of what a good movie is.
I know we're going to get to it, but you mean Ray Sharkey doing the best Latin accent since a Scarface?
Holy shit, that's what I wrote in the notes. I was like, just shit. just it is a broad accent. Anyway,
say hello to my little friend Belushi.
Oh
God, what's a hemo?
He keeps calling him that. What is a hemo?
I have no idea.
Rena,
literally no idea.
Before we get too far down this road, however, Rena, can you give us the trigger warning?
This movie contains depictions of and/or references to drugs, bad acting, network television, Bob Woodward, reanimated corpses, death, falling out of planes, the Chateau Marmont, poorly designed airplanes, Hollywood corruption, pinball, fat shaming of corpses, writer's block, and guardian angels.
Yep.
I feel like there's a lot I missed there.
This movie is just wall-to-wall triggers.
This movie's bonkers. I gotta say, if you gotta watch a terrible movie, this is the best kind of terrible movie to watch. This is why I wasn't mad about... Although I told you guys, I fell asleep twice before I was able to stay awake for the whole movie.
It was hard. It was really hard. And I'm wondering whether the pirated DVD that you watched, it was a DVD, right? Not a VHS tape?
It was a DVD, but it was a DVD transfer of a VHS tape, it turns out.
Yeah, because the way that we watched it was, we'll get to this. It was on a link from an archive link where it was 5x5 and very blurry.
Yeah. So I started watching that. I got that one, and then I was just like, no, I really got to be able to watch this movie because otherwise, it's like listening to a radio play sometimes.
And
Yeah.
like you could hear the fuzz in the background of whoever. Someone must have been holding a camcorder up to an old TV with the VHS tape running so they could pirate it to put it on the web for a
Right.
site that was subsequently taken down and archived. That is how much the universe did not want us to watch this film, and we went ahead and did it anyway for the benefit of all mankind because we thought there is not enough suffering in the world and we need to make up for that by suffering and watching this movie.
Speaking of which, Rena, do you have a spoiler warning for us?
Spoiler warning. We are going to spoil everything, including possibly the major plot points in works of narrative art having nothing to do with this particular movie. Consider yourself warned. So, some of the sources used in this include I read Bob Woodward's Wired, and I read the SNL book that came out around the 25th anniversary, which has a great index where you can turn to the names of cast members, and all of them will have Aykroyd, Dan, drugs and, Belushi, John, drugs and, Newman, Lorraine, drugs and, Murphy, Eddie, drugs and so on, which, so when I read Wired, it was a fairly gripping read. It's very well written, and I guess it is kind of, the whole gross, ick, drugs is kind of it all is kind of fascinating, but one of the things I realized, and I've been backed up on this, is Bob Woodward knows nothing about comedy. He knows nothing about what made SNL significant. And I remember in the early days of WTF, Mark Maron would complain about how people watching Community didn't know who Chevy Chase was, and he would say, kids now think that comedy starts with Mr. Show. I have no idea what kids now think comedy started with, but Bob Woodward didn't know what he was talking about. And it is considered Bob Woodward's worst book. I wouldn't know this because I read the first half of Fear and I watched the movie with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, but I'll take their word on it. He's someone I'm supposed to have read, but it's too depressing, and America just got worse anyway. But the best criticism that I've heard of Wired is that it is like if you wrote a biography of Buddy Holly, where you spent 2/3 of the book on the time that Buddy Holly spent on airplanes, because so much of the book is just about Belushi doing drugs. It does nothing to place him within the history of comedy. It does nothing to really put the scene in Chicago at the time in context. He doesn't get how SNL, he just doesn't get what he's talking about. And the way that Wired happened was that John Belushi and Bob Woodward were from the same town in Illinois, and Judith Belushi ran into Bob Woodward and she thought, here's the greatest reporter in America. I'm going to ask him to write about my husband because won't this be great? Bob Woodward was not operating in his wheelhouse. He was not in his lane. And I've never heard him accused of being a funny man. So that is how Wired happened.
I mean, Woodward is a great reporter and a great writer. What I thought was interesting, especially he was moralizing about. I mean, the guy is a square, right? And the guy was an establishment square, and he just happened to gain this anti-establishment cred because he and Bernstein followed the Watergate reporting all the way through to the unseating of a president. But what a lot of people don't realize is Woodward is otherwise pretty much an establishment Republican. The guy was never going to write a book that kind of condoned drug use or celebrated it or celebrated kind of the culture around Belushi and Saturday Night Live. What I think is really interesting, especially about his attitude towards that, was, his partner was Carl Bernstein, who had pretty well documented abuse problems of his own. I wonder if maybe there's a little bit of like him being fed up with dealing with that went into the writing of Wired.
Like, there's one point in Wired where he basically stops the book for, I can't remember, like, I can't remember if it was 50 to 100 pages. I read it a while ago, where he basically stops the book for one binge, which includes Belushi having the inside of his nose cauterized so he can go do more cocaine.
I mean, look, you got to do what you got to do to keep going.
But and it is torture to read this part because you're like begging in your heart, will you please just stop? Will you please
Right.
just go somewhere, pass out, and sleep it off? And it keeps going and going. But so, Sarah and
Oh.
Liam, can you please tell us a little bit about John Belushi in the movie Wired?
From our friends at Wikipedia, John Belushi was a member of Saturday Night Live's original cast, and he would go on to appear in 79 episodes of the show. He was, of course, the legendary star of Animal House, The Blues Brothers, also movie Continental Divide, Neighbors, and Going South. And I was sort of amazed when looking at his career by how little he had the chance to do because the influence is so massive. And also, he received an Emmy for his writing on SNL. About the movie, Wired came out in 1989. It stars Michael Chiklis from The Commish, which I think started airing like 3 years after this. And I remember like at that age, I just thought anybody who was bald was like an old adult. And finding out he was like 31 on that show was really shocking to me.
Yeah.
I was a very small child at the time, in my defense. Also the star of The Shield. This was his film debut. And this movie had a budget of $13 million and it made just a little over $1 million, which is shocking. This film has yet to be released on DVD or Blu-ray, and the video cassette originally released by International Video Entertainment is out of print. As you mentioned, Bob Woodward wrote the book, and no one was happy about that. And he really wanted to see it made into a movie, but he was it's just too dangerous for Hollywood to make this film. And it finally did get purchased by Edward Feldman and Charles Meeker, the producers. They put up $1 million of their own money for the budget. And then the rest of the film's funding came from the New Zealand conglomerate Lion Nathan, an alcohol distributor. Why? I don't know, but they've funded the rest of it. Larry Pierce was brought in to direct. He was a seasoned TV and film director. He directed a movie I love, Goodbye Columbus, starring Richard Benjamin, and a bunch of other stuff. And he appears to still be with us, but he seems to be retired. No one wanted to distribute this movie, so it took a while to release. They finished in 1988. It came out in 1989. The producers were all It's Too Dangerous, and the cabal of Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Bernie Brillstein is too powerful for this movie to ever be seen, which could have been the case, but also this movie is straight up terrible. It ended up premiering at the Cannes Film Festival in 1989, and it was met with a word I kept seeing over and over in the description of this movie, which was a hostile audience. Hostile is the word that comes up a lot around this movie, and afterward, Bob Woodward was assailed by questions at a press conference about his role in the film, a vision I enjoy. There's a lot of bad reviews of this, but I would like to quote from one of my favorite film critics, Nathan Rabin, who wrote, "To call Wired an unconscionable act of grave robbery and defilement would be an insult to the good name of grave robbers everywhere. There are snuff films with more integrity. Rausch apparently set out to write a biopic as irreverent, wild, and unconventional as Belushi is himself. The stakes were high. Had the filmmakers succeeded, they would have reinvented the biopic by injecting it with vast ocean of gallows humor, magical realism, and postmodern mindfuckery. The filmmakers took enormous chances, none of which paid off. They shot for the moon and fell flat on their asses." And Liam, you have some good background on the writing of this movie.
First of all, Bill Murray went viral about a month ago because he was on the Joe Rogan Experience talking about how they must have framed Nixon because he was like, this book was so off and was such a hit job. He's like, I can't trust Woodward to tell the truth about anything, and he was serious about it. Those guys, all those SNL guys, hated this book and hated this movie. Their contention was like they were misquoted. Woodward went in with an agenda. But Earl Mac Rausch, he wrote 3 other movies that got produced. And I'm just going to preface this by saying anyone who writes a movie and it gets produced, that's amazing. He's written 3 notorious flops. This is one of the reasons I really wanted to see this movie. He wrote Wired. He wrote New York, New York, the Martin Scorsese musical, which he co-wrote with Martin Mardick, who co-wrote a bunch of early Scorsese masterpieces like Raging Bull and Mean Streets. And he also wrote and created Buckaroo Banzai, Across the Eighth Dimension. Honestly, one of the craziest movies I've ever seen. Right? The thing that all these three movies have in common is that they're bonkers, and they have terrible structure, but like in the most interesting way. Like they're not structured like movies. They're structured like fever dreams.
Was this guy incredibly pleasant to work with? Because it sounds to me like one of those cases where people in Hollywood are just so bonkers and diabolical that if someone is untalented but pleasant to work with, they're probably likelier to get steady work than someone who is unpleasant to work with but talented.
I don't know how he hooked up with Scorsese, but apparently the way that Buckaroo Banzai got made was when he was a film student, he met a film producer and he just charmed the pants off the guy. And he like pitched Buckaroo Banzai as a concept, and just kind of like, this guy comes up with a million great ideas and he just tries to shove them all into a screenplay, and that's kind of unfortunately not how good screenwriting works. Here's the thing: I love Buckaroo Banzai. It's not a good movie, but John Lithgow as Dr. Emilio Lizardo. But it was also like, he came with this idea at a time when Spielberg and Lucas had kind of, with Star Wars and Indiana Jones, brought these like adventure serials from their childhood into these big budget hits, and all the studios were looking for another Indiana Jones or Star Wars. So you got movies like Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins and Alan Quatermain and Romancing the Stone. Like they were just looking for that next, like, Lucas type hit, and this was one of those movies. It didn't work. So basically Rausch has never written a hit movie, and this was, I think, the last movie he was allowed to write, or the last movie that he wrote that made it to the screen. This is 1982. To me, is even more interesting than someone like Joe Mankiewicz, or who wrote great movies, because exactly your question about how do these guys get in and how do they stay in, and a lot of the times it just boils down to they're really easy to work with. Like 99% of success in this town is being easy to work with.
I talk all the time on this show about how a film set is a business, is a place of business, and you need to be respectful in that place of business. And it drives me nuts when we hear stories about actors who aren't, because I just think about like the poor line producer who is trying to keep a schedule. And you can't get Johnny Depp out of his trailer, and then when you do, someone has to feed him his dialogue through an earwig. Like, that is just not showing up and doing your job.
The problem with like that is Johnny Depp is the reason everyone's there, right? Like the reason you have a job is because Johnny Depp said yes to this movie, and then you were able to raise money. And so everyone's got a job because of Johnny Depp. And my favorite stories are the ones about making the Blade trilogy.
Oh, God.
Because Wesley Snipes was so crazy and was smoking so much weed all the time that well, okay, so the reason we're here is because of Wesley Snipes, but how do we film around a guy who won't come to the set?
Yeah. Oh, there were stories for days about him on that movie.
But this guy got to work, get scripts made, even though they were all flops.
They were all flops, and I think Wired was the last straw, and I think he teaches screenwriting now at a university. He did a Buckaroo Banzai sequel novel. I want to meet this guy because people have been trying to make Buckaroo Banzai sequels for a long time, because there's something really great in that movie. And it's like one of those movies where I think it hits you, and you can't even explain why, except it's so bonkers. I know Kevin Smith was going to make a TV show a while back, and it just never happened.
People love that movie.
Wired is a lot like those other movies. I haven't seen his other movie, which is bad, but it's like Wired is a lot like that in that there's a bajillion ideas. In this one, none of them work. They didn't have the rights, obviously, to do SNL stuff. So so there's a scene where for some reason Dan Aykroyd is doing a Nixon impression while wearing a Conehead cone. Because
Yeah, I was like, this is like you told AI to write the sketch, but to do
yeah,
it badly.
it felt like a lawyer said, you can have him wearing a cone, but he can't be named Beldar or do the voice. And instead of giving up on the cone thing, they came up with the worst possible compromise.
There's also something about like seeing comedy within a movie. Like there's a real art to that, to creating things that are funny, like whether it's within a TV show or within a movie, that I would imagine is quite difficult to do. Like I'm thinking about like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the Aaron Sorkin show. Like the comedy bits in that show are
It's like Seinfeld. Seinfeld's a great comedian, but those stand-up bits were horrible. The rest of the show was so good, you kind of wish that they would just not do the stand-up bits.
yeah, that's the stand up is the only part that doesn't age well. And the
Yeah.
other thing that was really interesting when I was watching this, I I was trying to like isolate. There's a lot of things that are good that I compare it to. And one of the things that I was like, this is like the head trauma version of Bob Fosse's All That Jazz, which is one of my favorite movies. Like it's kind of like a similar conceit, and not necessarily a similar level of ego, because John Belushi didn't rise from the grave and make this movie, but just to portray someone this way and to kind of be so meta about it and so self-aware is, and some of the things that they did in terms of passing each other in narrative moments and things like that. Like, I did feel like a couple clicks to the right and this could have worked. It's
A couple, you mean a couple hundred?
well, yes, it's almost like a photo negative of everything that was right about All That Jazz. Like it gets everything wrong, but it there's the potential there. It's just the execution is a disaster.
It's a bad movie made by people who know what they're doing.
So just like the wrongest crew of people involved with it too. Like Larry Pierce is not a director with a strong POV.
You can always tell when there's like a director who's not that. And look, Larry Pierce has a very long, I looked up his filmography because I'd never heard of him before. He's a very long resume, but it's like, you can always tell a little bit when a director's not that strong.
Yeah.
When you start seeing like super interesting lighting setups in the shot, because that means that the cinematographer has a very like strong voice in what gets seen on screen. And so you kind of have to like say to a cinematographer, like, you can't have 18 lights and fog going on in the background because now that's all that people are going to want to watch. Like
Yeah.
nobody's watching Belushi's performance when there's this like super beautiful tableau behind him, completely upstaging him.
Also, was John Belushi part of this movie? Because I watched a movie about Bob Woodward trying to figure out why people do drugs.
So, well, Michael Chiklis was 24 when he made this movie. So he was 9 years younger than Belushi was at death. And he's been quite candid over the years about what happened here. But yeah, I would just like to hear more direct stories about everyone going, they're about their oh shit moment while they were making this.
People who were involved with this movie are still alive. And like I bet one of them would have something interesting to say.
I would be very interested to understand kind of what was going through people's heads every day. I also, at a certain point, mentioned Caligula in my notes because there was a scene that reminded me of like the level of indignity you see in that. And like, I just like wonder, what is it like going to set every day knowing like what you're making is this?
Well, one of the things that really helped me understand when I was very young, someone told me nobody sets out to make a bad movie or TV show, right? Like everyone's on set working together to make the best show that or film that they can. It just happens. So, but it's just very obvious that like they couldn't like they couldn't use the name Bernie Brillstein. We haven't talked about the fact that you have Mo Green playing Bernie Brillstein, which is a character he would end up playing again in a TV show called The famous Teddy Z.
Oh my God.
So it's like the exact same character. And he plays like a kind of a sleazy manager agent very well. But it's not also not Bernie Brillstein. I mean, like Bernie
Yeah.
Brillstein like was famously a nice guy.
Right from the jump, I can't place a biopic that we've watched that has as much open contempt for the subject of its film. And like even narrative film, I was like, this is like as sadistic as like Gummo or Happiness or Marat Sade or
Well,
Salo. Like
you
it
you
hates its subject matter. The way that you and I watched it, Rena, which was on a pirated site that had been shut down that we could only find through the Wayback Machine, was the right way to see this movie. And I'm fond of saying, or I haven't said it in a really long time, like that this movie shouldn't exist, but this movie shouldn't exist.
Well, you were saying it has a contempt for the subject. It's honestly the first time I've ever seen a movie that had contempt for the source material too. Like one of the running themes in this movie was all the characters complaining about what a hit job the book was.
Yeah.
And like the Woodward guy, JT Walsh is a great actor, and
Yes.
this really derailed his career, unfortunately.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd got J.T. Walsh kicked off another movie for being in this one.
Loose Cannons, terrible movie. Like he did JT Walsh the world's biggest favor. That was during his Dr. Detroit phase, where he couldn't make a good movie. It's just like all the characters complaining the movie was a hit job. JT Walsh playing Woodward is kind of like a bad cop. Like not even a journalist, but like a bad detective, like a Harvey Keitel in Bad Lieutenant.
Oh,
Like that's what he reminded me of.
that is
Oh,
quite the
God.
comp. As you mentioned, like there's no permission from SNL, so we have these weird sketches. I think at one point someone calls them skits, which I feel like
Yeah, and these make you what you don't understand why he was famous. You don't understand what people liked about SNL. I agree with you, Sarah. The best way to watch this movie is at 5 by 5 inches on a bootleg produced in an archive on the Wayback Machine, and then you blow it up on your like little personal computer screen from the 5 by 5 inches. But that just like amplifies the blurring, and the only way I can think of to improve on that would be to put the computer in a corner of your apartment facing the wall, walk into the kitchen, put on Kashmir and Immigrant Song on a continuous loop at volume 10 on your Alexa device, and sing along with them until the movie is over
Yeah.
while washing dishes.
That's a hell of a way to watch the movie.
put the movie in the corner like a bad dog.
But it starts with the King Bee song, which that was a real SNL sketch. That was something they did, and the Blues Brothers stuff they were able, I think, to reproduce because the songs don't belong to.
Yes.
Songs are just like those companies will license them out to any movie, and I just remember like having these discussions with my friends in high school. Where just like we all were just like, why is that funny? Like we like the movie. The movie's good. It's got car crashes and it's got funny bits, but it's like we would just be watching these old SNL and feeling like, why is the Blues Brothers funny? And it's like, yeah, I guess you had to be there.
It's
Right?
also that when something's been built up to you as this is so funny, you don't perceive it as funny. I think part of why I'm a Buster Keaton person and not a Charlie Chaplin is that I just wandered into the film for him.
Right.
Or like part of why I love the movie Bad Santa so much is I just wandered into it at the moment and I laughed my head off at it. The movies I've found the funniest are the ones where I go into it with no build-up. You can be one of the greatest comedic geniuses of all time, and if your audience is if the person watching your film has been hearing this is funny, this is classically funny, and they've read and read and read about it, they're going to be sitting there on their hands trying to laugh, and it's all not going to work. I don't think that there are very few people funny enough to overcome that even halfway.
I mean, I'm that way with movies in general. It's like took me forever to get into like the French New Wave or Ingmar Bergman or any of those great movies because it felt like homework watching them. Because it just like grew up hearing how important they were and how great they were. And then you start watching them and you're like, oh, right, these were made to be entertaining, right? Like these were made to be watched. They were not made to be studied and dissected.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
I don't read reviews for anything we do on the show.
I
Cause
Interesting.
do.
I always
yeah.
read everything after I watch a movie.
Yeah, it's interesting to like try and figure out like did I catch it? Also, I would imagine too like I think about like the relationship that an audience in 1976 had with Dan Aykroyd
Hmm.
and John Belushi and and performing these old songs like probably was very funny to the people who had that kind of relationship. Like our generation felt about like a Chris Farley, where just him being there was like, I'm trying to separate my real John Belushi from this movie. Like his facial expressions, when you think about some of the scenes in Animal House, they're just funny because he just watching him like respond to things and just sort of like look at stuff.
I mean, also, like, so some of SNL, I call it summer camp stuff because, like, the Blues Brothers, right? It's like, I get it. As an adult, I get it. It's like you're watching someone your age goofing around, having fun, and there's something fun in that.
I think that if I had been a boomer, Chevy Chase probably would have been the one that I would have watched the most avidly. Chevy Chase just had that one season. I'm someone where I don't tend to really respond. I don't tend to really respond to purely physical or emotional humor. I like meta. I don't laugh at emotional humor much because I feel so mortified on behalf of people. Like the humor that comes around someone being embarrassed.
Right.
Um, so I mean, I'm more about wit and quips than
Yeah.
what they were doing.
I would be interested. Like, I know Aykroyd hated this movie, but he okayed his name being used and his
Why
likeness.
did he do that?
I don't know. He took out a hex on this movie. He talked about back in the early '90s, and it worked. But yeah, I'm not clear on why Aykroyd was like fine with it. And
I bet,
honestly,
I bet I
oh,
know.
Why?
I guarantee you, one of these producers came to him and were like, "Look, we agree with you about the Woodward book. What a great way this movie is going to be to correct the story, to save John's legacy, to kind of get his side of the story out there." And then they didn't.
oh,
Like I
So you're
guarantee
and
some
saying his
produ-
lying works.
yeah, lied his ass off. Yeah, some producer lied their ass off, which works in the short term, but in the long term, it makes it impossible to get anything done ever again.
I also think like and it again, it's not good, but it's interesting what the actor playing Aykroyd is doing um in this movie. I feel like the actor doing Aykroyd in this movie is somehow like putting out there in the universe the Dan Aykroyd we'd see in Tommy Boy. Like the way that like the way his vocal cadence, like he is imitating Dan Aykroyd, playing Dan Aykroyd up to a high degree. It is like an imitation of Dan Aykroyd imitating himself.
But it's also the acting is so off. And see, I had a problem where the video quality was so blurry and the acting was so not great that I couldn't even tell who anyone was pretending to be from scene to scene.
I,
Yes.
I had a less blurry. I didn't. I mean, mine was watchable, and I didn't know he was supposed to be Aykroyd. Like
Yeah, or
I knew in the Blues Brothers stuff because he wore the glasses and the hat, but it took me a while to figure out what he was. And then I think Belushi calls him Danny, and I was like, oh, I think that's supposed to be Dan Aykroyd, maybe.
yeah, there was a lot of like non-acting, so sometimes I wondered, is that supposed to be Aykroyd? Is that supposed to be someone else or like some nondescript like person who's credited as friend in the credits? I couldn't tell. But so we open on a like Frankenstein moments. We have a
Mhm.
corpse reanimated on a stormy night, which flashes to other stormy nights. Um and where we're being wheeled into a morgue here after some black box voiceovers.
Yeah.
But also
And
the opening credits on this VHS transfer were crazy. There was like this bull and some 80s animation and like the sound of whatever was going on in the apartment of whoever filmed this thing off their TV screen.
Oh, really?
It was.
Oh,
There was like fuzz that sounded exterior.
If I'd known you were watching that, I actually would have burned this DVD and just sent you the file. Because mine is much more. It's kind of crazy.
I'm glad we had the experience of watching it the only way that's available to most people.
And here we get introduced to Ray Sharkey. And I noted in my notes here, like, that Dan White in Milk had less of a villain cut than Belushi does in this movie. Like, opening on him dead in a body bag is...
And that scene takes forever.
Oh, my God.
And there's, like, a racist black morgue attendant, like... singing a dirty song. That's like the first thing, right? Isn't that the first thing we see in the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he's singing the dumb song forever too.
Oh my God.
It's like, so what is this movie supposed to be about?
And all of the sets look like a high school built version, like play version of things. Like they're made out of plywood.
These sets are trash. I'll get to it when we get to the so-called Chateau Marmont.
You know,
oh yeah.
No, I don't know where that 13 million went. It didn't go on screen, that is for sure.
I think maybe to song rights, which they got the most out of those song rights because they play those songs to completion.
They did. King Bee went on forever.
So he gets into this cab. Like, we're seeing like a lot of things happening at once. Like, and we when we watched the movie Gotti, which was one of the worst movies we've ever seen, there's like 3 framing devices in that movie.
Four there, and we called it the turducken framing device, where it's so weak that they have to come up with multiple framing devices to try to entice multiple audiences in, or to get everyone asking enough questions that they think they'll have an audience. But it's like this movie is constant turducken. Like
you're talking about the TV movie starring Travolta as John Gotti.
It wasn't that was a real release.
That was a big
that was a feature
movie.
release.
Was it? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the framing device in this movie for a second? Because
yes,
I think there's some context that's like really important to understand this movie, which is in 1982, It's a Wonderful Life was in the public domain. And so every TV sitcom through the 90s, because this movie was just on repeat all the time. So like every TV show had an It's a Wonderful Life episode because it was something that everyone understood. So this is clearly Roush just being like, I'm going to take the It's a Wonderful Life guardian angel showing you your life framing device and just apply it to the John Belushi book. And it's terrible. It makes no sense, especially since it's also a movie about Bob Woodward investigating John Belushi's life. So it's like, again, you're turduckening these 2 different framing devices into one movie.
Well, it also it kind of like beggars belief too that like John Belushi's story wasn't enough to sustain like a 90-minute film, to where you had to have these multiple plots going on.
It's like you also stuff an ostrich outside the turkey and then a pterodactyl on top of the ostrich, but then inside the chicken that is within the duck within the turkey, you put a pigeon and a robin and a sparrow.
And then you stuff them with cornbread.
Yeah, and it's just kind of exploding all over you too, because it's not organized. It's all happening at the same time. Like all of the framing devices are happening. So like our first sighting of Belushi is him in a hospital gown, in which he stays for most of the movie in the Ray Sharkey framing device, the cab one. And he gets into Ray Sharkey's cab, who just put a pin in him for a second. And he has removed himself from the body bag, and they start their crackling dialogue. And also, just a side note, fuck Ray Sharkey. He was HIV positive as of 1989. He concealed it. He knowingly had sex with at least 100 women after he was diagnosed.
Wow.
2 of whom publicly shared that they contracted the disease from him. And sorry, fuck that guy. That's so shitty. And he kind of denied that he had it right up until the end. So, and certainly denied that he gave it to anyone.
Well, that just
anyway.
adds another terrible layer to this story.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like saying that, but really, like, fuck him for doing that. That's terrible.
No, he's a terrible.
Terrible. That is terrible. So Belushi wakes up on the autopsy table and runs away. He runs away naked from his autopsy. Yes.
First the stereotypical
after eating a sandwich,
puts a sandwich on his body, walks out of the room, and Belushi grabs the sandwich and eats it.
The other thing too is like John Belushi's a normal sized dude. The fat shaming in this was really over the top.
In the 70s, he was a big fat guy because everyone else was like so skinny. Now he would be considered a normal, average guy. But you watch those old SNLs where he's like shoving chocolate donuts in his face, and you're like, he doesn't seem that obese.
Yeah, I hate that shit though.
It's funny in Animal House when he's just shoving food in his face.
Right when he like pops his cheeks while he has the mashed potatoes and says, "I'm a zit."
I agree with you in principle, like that it's not funny, but when Belushi did it, maybe it's because he was making the joke, and he's like very clearly committing to it 100% and behind it. Like you're like, okay, well that's kind of
and also it's also like the way he does it too. Like they show us the scene in Animal House, filming that in this movie. Spoiler alert for later in the episode. The way he does it is just this sort of fascinating little masterclass in making a moment. And I hated watching faux John Landis direct this because I don't believe for a second that John Landis came up with any of this, because also fuck John Landis. I think like it's the way he is experiencing it and like the way he's examining everything too is very funny.
I'm going to say fuck John Landis for what he did on the Twilight Zone movie. And also for his kid. But I'm not going to say fuck John Landis for directing Animal House or...
Oh, no. I was just...
movies.
I just want to believe that John Belushi came up with that himself. I don't want to give...
Yeah, I mean, I think Landis says that John Belushi improvised all that. Like...
Oh, okay.
Or maybe he doesn't.
In this movie, he's like yelling at him to do, like, step forward, breathe.
Well, he also punches him in the face. You think John Landis ever punched Belushi in the face?
If he did, he does get payback eventually from Eddie Murphy.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, which he fully deserved.
Sorry for being so passionate about the early work of John Landis. Animal House, it still holds up. It shouldn't hold up.
Sarah, what was the thesis of your college paper on Animal House?
I basically framed it up as it was a generational end to freedom and good times because Animal House all takes place just before the Kennedy assassination.
Oh yeah.
And the start of the Vietnam War. So that the movie itself is about the destruction of innocence, and also that the movie is set in a time period where it is the end of innocent shenanigans. I think that was what it was. Liam, I wrote a lot of bogus papers in college.
I mean, you're right. It sounds like a great premise for a paper, actually. I'm sure it's a great... I hope you got an A for that, because it's...
Oh, I did, but should I have been writing papers on Animal House while my parents paid money? No.
So you're trying to talk. You both keep going on and on about good movies, and we have to talk about this one.
Okay.
There's a reason. I mean, there's a reason we don't want to talk about.
We don't want to talk about this.
Right.
I will say, the John Landis in Wired is unrecognizable.
The John Landis in Wired also gives like one of the worst get help speeches ever delivered in a movie.
Yes.
I mean,
and it looks nothing
so
like
bad.
John Landis.
Okay, so I mean, let's talk about it then. Michael Chiklis. Michael Chiklis does a great job embodying the physicality of Belushi. He does not look like John Belushi.
No.
No.
And he does a good job with the voice sometimes.
He's doing his best. And like I describe like all of the performances in this movie for the most part, like they are at worst they're very committed.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they're good, but they are all the way to the wall. And he shows, I guess, like, I mean, the material didn't serve him very well in terms of giving him a way into the character of John Belushi, but also I don't have a good sense of anything about the man from this movie, except that he did drugs.
It's kind of crazy because these people are playing actors who were the most famous actors in the world at that time. Right? Like these were huge movie stars that people knew like the back of their hands. Like especially the target audience for this movie would be people who were interested in John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and SNL.
Yeah.
And they keep missing they keep missing it so many times.
Also, nothing in this movie looks good. Like, yeah, they recreate the bee costumes, they build a cone for the head, but it's also coming out in that there's this weird window around films set in the past where if you're making it 5 or 10 years out, nothing's changed quite enough to really show it. But also you're showing people, especially when the fashion wheel turned a little bit slower, you're showing people who are supposed to be the coolest people in the world 5 or 10 years ago. The problem is you're going to put them in clothes that like the most backward, not cool people in America are currently wearing, and it's going to make them look less cool. So the way around this is to just have people in whatever's current or to not try very hard, which is sort of what happens here. In terms of set, like we talked about, like I was like, this does not look like the Chateau Marmont. This looks like a really sad off-brand, I don't want to say Holiday Inn because they sometimes use color in decorating a Holiday Inn. This is like a sad off-brand, I can't say Courtyard by like every chain of hotel I could come up with as a comparison for what this is off-brand to, it looks better than this hotel room. And also the walls on every set here look like they're about to fall down.
I was going to go all the way to assisted living community.
Yes.
With the way that the Chateau Marmont looks.
I once did a cross-country trip and I booked a Priceline suite 5 minutes before I got to the hotel at like this off-brand hotel that was literally right next to a chain suite hotel, like, you know, one of those hotels. Yeah. This is exactly, and it smelled like mildew, and the Marmont looked exactly like the hotel room I stayed in.
Right. It looked filthy in like a dirt grained into the walls kind of way, not filthy in a this is a luxury hotel that someone has fucked up for several days away.
In one of the other movies that we're watching in this movie, we meet Bob Woodward, and he is going to, it seems like he is getting the phone call that he doesn't believe, that Judy doesn't believe that John died from heroin.
Right, because he hated needles.
Yeah.
But then also, they did needles together later in the movie.
Well, and also, like, Bob Woodward laboring under the supposition someone hating needles is the reason they didn't do heroin or like continue to do heroin. I was like, oh, Bob Woodward, you adorable little scout reporter from your high school newspaper. Like,
it's true. Belushi couldn't shoot himself up. He had to have other people around him to inject him. He was a celebrity. He'd never had to learn how to do it for himself.
I think it's crazy that Bob Woodward, within a decade, was in one of the best movies ever about investigative journalism and one of the worst movies ever made about investigative journalism.
Yeah.
Like, he's a character in both movies. They're both based on his books. And, you know, the thing is, so also, didn't Belushi die from a speedball? Right.
It was
so, like,
a speedball.
And Robin Williams was there, which he is not in the movie. Yes. And I think De Niro was there, and he's not in this movie.
Yeah, there's a whole
So
bunch of
many
people
people
who
not
were
in
in
this
and out
movie.
of that room that night.
Yeah, I think you see someone who might supposed to be based on Robin Williams, like at one point in the shadows, and then he leaves, but like you don't really get a sense that. Well, first of all, that whole sequence to me, it's the craziest part of this movie. Was up until that night, this movie's a gonzo comedy, right? Like, there's no weight at all to the movie. There's no sense that like this is a movie about a generational talent who dies too young from a drug overdose. Like, it's a wacky movie filled with sketches and like weird off-brand comedy bits within the movie, and it becomes a road trip at one point where like Belushi somehow manages to sleep through Las Vegas. Maybe that happened in real life. I can't imagine how. I don't know if you've ever taken a trip to Las Vegas. It takes a few hours to get through, and it's a
Yeah.
little bit noisy. I've taken the trip in that movie that they're describing. It's tough to make. It's tough to sleep through. Actually, once you get to Las Vegas, because it's a terrifying drive. Um, but up until that moment where we're at the night where it becomes this like bad surreal David Lynch movie. It's just like a low budget wacky comedy about a dude who did a bunch of interesting things that you don't really learn too much about.
So the cab driver says his name is Angel just to make it obvious what he's
Right.
supposed to be. But apparently he's actually like the angel of some guy who died passing out in Central Park, but never saw Saturday Night Live because he had to work nights, although he did see all 7 Belushi movies.
Also, that's not what an angel is. Just that's
Yeah.
if you know anything about the religion, an angel is not a dead person. I'm sorry, but keep going.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
you turn into when you die. And they go to a diner where he's wearing a sheet and he can eat a burger. But I guess the conceit here is that when you're dead, you can eat cheeseburgers, but you can't use a payphone.
Right. Also, it was a great way to slip in the cheeseburger bit.
Oh, yes.
That was the entire reason they went to that diner, was so that Angel could go cheeseburger.
This fucking movie, man.
Yeah.
Which was
And then
fun with time.
It
So
seems like they're all sleeping in the same house, him and Judy and Dan, but I don't know.
How
and
about
then
they're sleeping in
yeah,
the same room
Yeah.
in Greenwich Village?
yeah, on so it's the 70s, so they're able to afford to live on Bleecker Street, and they have like colored sheets hung over the walls. And it is true that Belushi was spending $1,000 a week in late 70s money on coke while on a not ready for primetime player salary. And SNL salaries, especially in the first 5 years, have never been comparatively impressive for entertainment. Like, I think in the early 2020s, if you were in your first season, you got like $3,000 an episode. You're gonna get side work if you're on it. But also, Belushi didn't make a ton of money from Animal House or Blues Brothers either. The only things he did that he made money from were a couple of his later films that flopped. So one of the first things that they tell you in sketch writing classes at UCB is that you'll never make money off the thing that makes you famous. It's about how you leverage it later.
So what those guys did, and what the SNL guys still do, is they just toured. Like, I think Belushi and Aykroyd would hit the road sometimes and do comedy, like sketch comedy or whatever, in different cities, and that's how they would make their money.
Smart.
Before they got into movies, or they would guest star on TV shows, or like there are a lot of little ways that someone who's like cult famous could make money in the 70s. The $1,000 a week thing, that's nuts. $4,000 a month in mid 70s money is.
Yeah, in 70s money is like 20,000 or
Yeah.
16,000 today.
That's like a starting salary in the 70s at a proper, at like a proper business.
What, 1,000 a month? 1,000 a week?
No, I'm thinking of like I feel like my dad made like $23,000 a year or something at his first job, and of course he could buy a car and own a house and
Yeah.
support an entire family on it. But yeah, it's just like thinking about that, like that's so much money. Sorry. I
No.
don't know where I was going. I'm like I'm terrible at economics, and I'm always trying to make economics based points on this show, and it's a disaster.
I mean,
Um,
I grew up in a neighborhood in Queens with just rinky-dink houses, and my parents could have bought one for $45,000 back then, and now they all sell for at least 750. Like it's crazy how different things were back then.
yeah, so to spend $1,000 a week on anything is
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot of drugs.
yeah. That's
Yeah, so yeah,
and the
so
fact
the
that
the cat
he was upright.
well, so the cabbie drops him off in front of what I eventually figured out is supposed to be the entry to 30 Rock, but it
Yeah.
looked like some busted Midwestern town's only skyscraper.
If you had had a better print, you would have seen they had a stencil on the side of the wall that said RCA building. And that overhead light thing kind of looks like the entrance to 30 Rock. But yeah, it took me a
Doesn't look
couple
like they're
minutes.
driving into Rockefeller Center.
No.
This was the point where I became
This is
convinced
like
that,
the most unlit New York I've ever seen.
yeah, this was the point where I became convinced that Ray Sharkey thought that this was going to be an Academy Award nomination for him. Where I was like, oh, he thinks this is his Oscar.
But I mean,
Um,
could you see the SNL set that they were supposed to be performing on?
yes,
Yeah.
It looked
And
bad.
I could see it, and I pretty much assumed that any darkness was selective in order to try and convince us that it was SNL. Like I
Yeah,
felt like a lot of the lighting was selective in order to make it look like they were places where they obviously could not be.
this movie looked like it cost like a quarter million, maybe.
but especially, I mean, I've been to a couple of SNL tapings, not to brag, and the set looks way different, right? Like
Yeah.
home base is actually bigger than the set in this movie, and it's tiny, right? And then there's like a couple more stages to the left and right where they can go to, like that's how they do live television, is they go from one set from wing to another. You know, the audience is on swivel chairs so that they can like follow from left to right.
Oh.
But this one, it's like tiny, like it's like what, 4 rows of audience. This tiny set that's supposed to be home base where they're doing Blues Brothers shit, and it looks
But
Excuse me, it is Brothers Blue. Brothers Blues,
no
I
no
believe is what they call it on
really.
this. Yeah, they had like a logo that was like blues instead of Blues Brothers, it was Brothers Blues.
Oh, I must have misread that. Like I must have just been like I had a little trouble focusing during those segments because
What?
the
it looks like
the original Blues Brothers stuff missed me so much that watching a bad recreation actually,
Yeah. It it
uh,
it was it was a bummer.
or
the
like when
audience all
Duffy
seemed to
shows.
be audience all seems to be sitting on like those chairs that you see in bars and restaurants where it has like
Yeah,
the it's sort of where it has the round seat that's really hard on your butt and one leg is always slightly shorter than the others and the
yeah.
back feels like there's a screw coming loose and it's kind of rickety. That's what the chairs the audience were sitting in looked like. And then someone picks them up and stacks them at the end of the night so they get more rickety over time.
Question here too. Was I and I just don't know the answer to this. Was John Belushi always chewing gum?
I think that's how you indicate someone's doing cocaine.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Their
the
'Cause
jaw.
TMJ man.
okay, because it looked like I mean, and it looked like he was chewing gum,
I
but
I, th-
maybe
I
it
think
was
I think that's the coke jaw.
okay.
Um, but sweet innocent summer child.
I know. I'm like, oh, that's adorable. I'm just as adorable as Bob Woodward with his people are doing drugs in Hollywood.
But
Um,
I was just saying, like when Duffy shows up as a movie producer, but I didn't understand if he for a long time. I was like, is he a record producer? Is he a movie producer? Is this supposed to be an office? Is this like a hotel room?
yes. Oh
Like,
my gosh, I was so excited when he showed up. I was like, oh look, he's working all the time
yes.
still, and looks exactly the same.
I met him last year very briefly, and he's a very nice guy, and he looks like
Oh,
that. And I was just like very geeked out to actually meet him because
I
I was like, this Win Duffy, he looks like that.
I would be so geeked out to meet him. He had this very short arc on Breaking Bad. I don't remember. I think it was in the fourth season
Uh,
where he was a counselor at Jesse was at a rehab, and it was I was like, why aren't you in more of this? But anyway,
well,
yeah, he's
he's on
there.
Facebook if you want to friend him.
Oh, but he's there, and Alex Rocco is there, and all of these people are just coming in and out. He has like a sober coach at one point. I just have a lot of how, what, why in my notes from this, like just like why, and
Right.
it seems like after this we go back to Bob Woodward's office, and what I'm assuming is supposed to be Ben Bradley. Um, they're
It's so
talking.
bad, you guys.
They're
I,
talking about the whole Hollywood drug scene.
you know what? I honestly, there was so much going on in this movie, I can't remember the scene you're talking about.
There's just all this like moralizing. I'm wondering if the New Zealand alcohol provider was like trying to get a strong, like if they were like, you need to have a moment in every scene where someone
Uh,
points out the evils of drugs and like why people do them and how like lascivious it is. And just like him talking about like, well, people do drugs in Hollywood because they're lonely and they're bored and they have everything but they have nothing and whatever, and they're bored and restless and they need to get away from reality. And I was like, you know where else people are like that? Fucking everywhere.
right.
Like
The Midwest.
drugs are not like centrally located in like the Los
Right.
Angeles perimeter and nowhere else. They're everywhere. Like whatever. And also like Woodward is I guess like also here's where I felt like I was like, oh, Woodward's kind of being like Truman Capote in Cold Blood. Again, comparing this to a better movie, the way he's like walking around and talking to people. And I at this point I just made a note. This movie is the worst thing that's happened this year. I
Do you
don't
mean 2026 or 1989?
2026, which I think is probably a little dramatic.
I was
And then
gonna,
we have the Nixon Conehead sketch, and I just feel like there were so many things where it's like, if you couldn't get the rights, it was a sign that you should not have made the movie.
Yes.
yeah, I mean, especially since all you had to do was the Nixon impersonation. And by the way, we haven't even talked about the Groucho Marx sketch.
Which is actually a recreation of a doctor's appointment that Belushi is shown having earlier in the
Uh,
movie, but is set up as an SNL sketch that time is a very loose concept here, but it's set up as an SNL sketch that he's watching nostalgically, where it seems like the thing he's watching would have been filmed before this doctor's appointment, that it's actually an echo of. And I don't think that this sketch, where Aykroyd is a Groucho Marx doctor asking Belushi questions that a real doctor wouldn't ask him for what appears to be a couple years later, and then they go back in time and make it into a sketch for Belushi to watch years later while dying and watch again shortly later while dead. I don't think any of this ever
no,
happened. I don't think I'm making sense right now. That's how much this movie is just,
no,
yeah, Sarah, this movie should not exist.
that's the point where Lorne Michaels should have sued because that sketch was so bad and so weird and just so off model to anything that SNL would have ever done. I mean, like, like Lorne Michaels was famously strict and he was like, they're not skits, they're sketches. Carol Burnett does skits, we do sketches. Like, if anyone had pitched that sketch, they would have been fired.
I honestly want to see a real thing where Belushi, it shows like the real ways that he was an asshole, like that he wouldn't do skits written by female writers,
Hmm.
or he'd do them in a really like
Oh, well, I mean,
monotone and say, oh, women aren't funny.
Rena, this was made in 82. Nobody was against that in 82. I mean, that's like you'd have to make this movie now to really get to get to like this movie. There were no women in this movie. Judy Belushi and the groupie
Patty
that killed
Durbinville. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who is the only, Patty Durbinville is the only person who gives a passable performance in this movie, but I'm like
sure.
suspicious of myself in thinking that because I made a mistake and read a review where someone's is like, oh, she's the only, and it's like, this is why I don't read reviews because they make me question my own assessment.
In '82, SNL is one of the only shows that employed women as comedy writers.
I've heard one of the worst situations you can be in as a woman in a writer's room is to be in a room where there are three female writers and the majority are men because the men will play you off against each other.
There's a great book. It's mostly about the making of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but there's a woman in the writers' room, and she's portrayed very heroically. There's nothing to do with the movie we're watching, but again, tough to
No,
watch.
it seems
Tough
like
talking
we are
about the movie.
constantly trying to talk about anything but the movie we
Yeah.
watched.
Okay,
Because
so
we're normally much better about going through the plot, and this was unbearable.
this movie was. I wouldn't say this movie was filled with all-timers in terms of like character actors, but this cast is pretty stacked. I mean, Chiklis is would go on to do great work in TV. He has also played the Thing in the kind of
Yes.
off-brand Fantastic Four movies.
The first off-brand Fantastic Four movie is okay if you watch it with the sound off on a plane, which is how
Uh-huh.
I watched it. And then I felt bad for the Thing. It felt sort of like a silent comedy tragedy, but also this was like 20 years ago, and I'd had a few drinks before watching it on the plane, so I
Uh,
don't know if I know what I'm talking about here.
I know what you're talking about. I watched Mars Attacks on the wall of a bar with the sound off. I watched Chiklis in The Shield, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's a great actor.
He is.
You know, like
He
I
was
want,
in a messed up situation because he was 24 and no one clued him in.
and it really, and this movie pissed off a lot of Hollywood power brokers. It's the kind of movie where, yes, you get to star in a movie that everyone's going to watch, but someone really needs to take you aside and say, like, this is not the movie you need to debut in. Right? Like JT Walsh, this fucked up his career for life. Like Chiklis got lucky. JT Walsh did a lot of good work after this, but he could have been a star.
Michael Chiklis actually credits Burt Reynolds with saving his career.
Uh-huh.
Because Burt
Um,
Reynolds said, I don't believe in blacklisting, and got him some small
Right.
TV parts,
yeah.
and he built back from there.
Also, Burt Reynolds didn't give a shit about it, Hollywood. So, like,
No.
Yeah.
God bless Burt Reynolds.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't stay mad at that guy. But yeah, Chiklis was lucky in that. And also that he was young. He told the story of like he apologized to Jim Belushi for being in this movie. And Jim Belushi was like, you had no idea.
The actress who plays Judy Belushi is kind of a non-entity, and a lot of people who I've heard are good in other things just kind of come across as non-entities here. I think everyone is just getting through the day. To motor through this thing, we see Woodward talking to Judy, and I don't know, where do you want to jump back in here, Sarah?
I mean, I guess like we can just kind of like it's just like a parade of indignities that happens. It's all very confusing because sometimes he and Angel are in the car with Dan Aykroyd and a live Belushi. There's a lot of touching on each other's stories without actually being in them. This is the point too where there was a sequence where I think it's the most undignified thing I've ever seen in a movie, which is Michael Chiklis in a hospital gown tackling Ray Sharkey on the ground and them having like kind of like a wrestling fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is the most like awful thing. This is a bummer. And like he's in and out of the morgue a bunch of times, and Thomas Noguchi is poking at him, and we see that he's got needle marks. Things are just bouncing around all over the place.
This blurs the line between life and death because he's feeling what he shouldn't be feeling with his dead body on the cold metal slab, and he yells, "Get me the hell out of here, I'm cold, it's cold." And the doctor says his bladder's full, as in like, oh, he passed out and didn't know he was going to pee. But I was under the impression that when you die with a full bladder, you pee on yourself. And then, like, the doctor says, I will make the first incision, which they use as an excuse to cut to the samurai sketch, and then back again. And
Wait.
at this,
Dude, slow down, because what you're talking about is an Asian doctor
yes,
who then morphs into the samurai character.
yes,
To be fair, the Asian doctor is supposed to be Thomas Noguchi, who is famed
Uh-huh.
autopsy. Like he did all of the autopsies.
To be fair, that makes it even crazier.
Yes.
So wait, did he do the autopsy? He did the autopsies for the Wonderland murders and Manson and
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't improve this situation at all, but
No, but they were like, hey, we have this Japanese doctor and we have this guy who played a Japanese character. It makes sense to make them one and the same.
and this went on for like 2 days.
And I just have to reiterate how not fun this movie is to watch. Like, this is the point where I paused, even though I should have just let it keep going so it would finish faster, so that I could Google, do you pee on yourself when you die? Because the whole premise seemed medically weird to me.
And what did you come up with?
It's quite common to piss on yourself when you die.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen.
Interesting.
When you have a movie like this where all this stuff is happening and it doesn't make sense, it's also an indication that, again, you don't have a strong director or strong producer working with you, because, like, if you watch New York, right? Same co-writer, but you have Martin Scorsese, who has, like, a supernatural ability with movie logic and movie structure. And so New York's too long and too much stuff happens and there's too many ideas in it. But it also is, like, very disciplined in the way it tells the story. Whereas in this movie, it just feels like the guy turned in a draft and everyone was like, great, this is the movie. No notes.
I don't think anyone could have made this script work.
No. The dialogue is weird.
It was like, no. Oh my God, it's only at 36 minutes and 35 seconds. How is this still happening? How is there over an hour left to go to sit through? I mean, I feel like if I want to live long, maybe having this movie on repeat would make my life feel longer.
Yeah.
And life is too short.
I mean, it certainly would make you pray for the cold embrace of death.
If this movie's goal is to make you not want to do heroin, it failed, because I was sitting there watching this thing now and thinking, if someone came up to me and offered me a bag of heroin so I could pass out and be unaware of this movie, I would snort that whole bag of heroin.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, man. Look, when we finally got to the night, the Marmont, it was a relief. I was like, okay, we're done.
We're done, and yet it's going to go on for another. Like, I kept checking the time code too, because I was like, how are we at his funeral and there's 40 minutes left of this movie? Like, how is that possible?
And then his funeral is before the Marmont, so it's like we're still finding more birds to stuff in and outside of the turducken. Like,
So many
we're going
birds.
to other galaxies for bigger birds.
So many birds in this turducken.
And then you finally get to the Marmont scene, which should be the, emotional core of the movie. It's like, it was filmed like a Skinamax movie.
Yes.
It's just like suddenly bad slow-mo and lights everywhere and like that like Skinamax soundtrack. Bam, 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 bam. It was like expecting David Duchovny to show up and introduce the Red Shoes Diary in that sequence.
This is a Marmont that makes you feel like you're going to spontaneously generate lice off your body just from looking at it.
I will say it feels like a hotel room someone would die in. Like,
Yes.
absolutely. I've stayed in many hotel rooms like that where you're like, someone would absolutely OD in this room.
I have a question here, because we have a moment where it looks like we're in improv class. I think it is improv class. And A, is that supposed to be Del Close?
That's Del
And
Close.
B,
Yeah.
you guys have done improv.
Uh-huh.
Is this what it's like? Do you just stand there and someone screams at you?
Well, level 1 when I had to do a
Can't
crazy
be.
person.
It can be, but I have taken classes from people who worked with Del Close, and I don't think that this is fair to him. He was insane. And also improv was a complete waste of 6 years of my life. But
Well, that's not the movie's fault.
that's not the movie's fault. That's my fault.
I mean, look, Dell was a famously intense guy,
Yeah.
and he willed his skull to some theater company so it can be used in production of
Steppenwolf, I
Hamlet.
think.
Yeah, so it can be used in
Yeah.
production of Hamlet, right? So it's like he was nuts,
I
but
love
also,
this plan.
I don't think anybody would have stuck around Second City if that was the way that he taught improv.
Well, it doesn't seem like it would be a really effective way to
And
to
Although
also,
teach
it's a,
to teach
it,
anything.
I mean, second, I mean, look, this is another point where the movie completely misses the mark because Second City at that time was such a famous incubator of talent, right? And there's so many ways that
mhm.
you could have shown that and shown like that this Second City is where Belushi discovered himself and he really like discovered his talent and he like made friends with like-minded people who were equally talented and would also become legends. And instead it's just Del Close screaming in his ear for a minute.
And it's like they're in a black box where nobody else is at this place. Wow,
Yes, in that
it's
Family
like
Ties
there's
episode.
yeah, it's like there's the one guy and his teacher in a room with a very low
Right.
electric bill.
If this was a movie about a guy who became a famous dramatic actor, that scene would make all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
You know, like screaming at a guy to discover his pain. Absolutely. Like that's like you would believe that if like maybe if like it was about Brando becoming a method actor.
Well, somewhere moving up to here after one of the Brothers Blues scenes, as we're cutting back and forth, there was a thing where you noted, Sarah, now I don't know anything about doing drugs, but this doesn't seem like how you snort cocaine.
Yeah, like
So,
I don't know. I again like I literally don't know. He has the straw up his nose and it's just kind of like sitting there like almost
uh-huh.
like an extension of his body where it's just there and he can just lean down and snort and it has like a
All
Rube
right.
Goldbergy kind of energy to it. Like
Well,
where it's like
yeah, it felt like the straw is kind of hanging limply from his nose at an off angle, and then the pile of coke on the thing is really enormous. The lines are wider than the straw. And it's on this weird square mirrored plate with holes around the edge. His hand wobbles, but the piles of powder on it don't move. Um, which makes me think that this is like Fisher Price brand cocaine, where you sell it to children in a rubber pile so they can pretend they're doing cocaine. Um, and then he lifts the small tray to his face, but I would expect from what I know about gravity and like powder for it to go flying off the tray. What I found myself thinking was like, no wonder John Belushi was spending close to the equivalent of $4,500 a week in 2026 money on coke, because it looked to me like from the way he was handling it, most of it would have wound up on the floor or on his clothing. So based on the observational details of this scene, John Belushi's cocaine problem was not that he did cocaine, but that he did cocaine inefficiently.
it's like an airplane. He has a
Right.
drinking problem and he just keeps missing his mouth.
Belushi's problem was that he gave it away. Like he
Oh.
shared with a lot of people. He made a lot of friends that way.
Yeah. See, that's
Um,
the don't
yeah,
share.
that's the problem when you're a cokehead and a nice person.
Yeah.
Oh
See,
no.
I would have been all wrong for this culture.
We cut back to for some reason, Belushi does a Brando impression on the autopsy table, and here I scream in all caps, how is there over an hour left in this? And yes, this is where we all cut to the acting class with Del Close, who sounds a lot like a cult leader. And then there's a samurai scene, Sarah, that you said, and I wrote, this movie is a bigger waste of time than improv, and it takes a lot for me to say that. I would love to have back all the thousands of dollars I spent on improv. It was a stupid waste of time.
I
Therapy.
mean,
So,
The difference is the people in an improv scene look like they're having fun, and nobody in this movie looked like they were having a good time.
No,
No.
no, it looked like the military.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
well, yeah, then there's a samurai scene that you noted was more offensive than Hiroshima. And then I just like, who thought this was funny? Who okayed this? And then Patty D'Arbanville shows up to, it just keeps happening. Oh, there's a scene where first John Belushi is excited to find out that Bob Woodward is going to write his autobiography, and he's like, not his autobiography, although I
Right.
wouldn't put it past this movie to have Bob Woodward write someone else's autobiography. They're driving past, for some reason they're in the same red car, or they're in a beat up version of the other car. Maybe they're just both the red cars and I couldn't tell because of the quality of the print. But first, Belushi, still in the hospital gown, is excited that Bob Woodward, who he says he's always wanted to meet, is gonna write his biography. But then the angel tells him, no, man, that's Bob Woodward. He's gonna do to you what he did to Nixon.
Oh.
And then we cut back to the set of Animal House. And then we're in a trailer where the guy playing John Landis gives the most cliched "stop doing drugs, don't do this to yourself" speech I've ever heard. And at this point, I just had to get up and pace the apartment because I couldn't take it anymore.
and then, yeah, then we're trying to squeeze his body onto the plane,
Oh my
and they
God.
can't get the casket in, so they just
Yeah.
take the body bag and strap it into the seat.
That feels like it might have been a true story just because it was so ridiculous.
It feels
Well-
like it might have been a true story, but it's also like, don't tell that true story.
But it's also, this is not how you load cargo onto planes, because this plane it's too big to be the kind of rinky-dink passenger plane. And it's also, the door just looks it looks like they intentionally made the door too small in order to do this visual gag, so that they could act like they're trying to ram a big coffin through a tiny door in the side of this plane. But none of it makes sense based on any airplane I've seen. And airplanes this size have a cargo hold. Like, there's other ways of... there's the place where they put the bags, where there's supposed to be a thing that comes down. None of this makes any sense, and it's not funny.
Well,
It's
it's a
really
private
not
jet.
funny.
So it's a private jet, and jets that size, yeah, they have cargo holds that, like, like, so you're supposed to be able to put all kinds of sizes of cargo in there. Very clearly, again, this goes back to, like, what's the tone of the movie? Is it like a reverent biography of a fallen legend? Is it a wacky comedy in the style of that fallen legend? Are you trying to be like Hunter S. Thompson and just go gonzo with it? Or are you like, it just, the tone of this movie is all over the map. And and again, it's like a movie that's trying to have its cake and eat it too, because it's like what you were saying about, okay, well, here's this meta criticism of the book and the movie and the hatchet job while also participating in it. Like, you can't have it both ways with this.
Nope.
No, and it's also like, why is he still in a body bag inside the coffin? They're supposed to, like, embalm you and put you in a suit before they send you off to the funeral.
Right.
Especially because, like, planes hit different temperatures and they want the body. And then...
Right.
So they take the body in the black plastic bag with, like, duct tape around it out of the coffin. That, again, they're acting like he was Henry VIII sized, but
Right.
I've seen coffins. Even a coffin for a fairly robust man would still be, like, maybe it would be, like, 4 feet high by 4 feet wide, which is still within, like, a door on a plane.
Right. He wasn't a dude being buried in a piano crate, which is
Yeah.
what they do with, like, enormous people. He was in a normal sized coffin.
Yeah.
And also, when you're dead, they don't have to worry about whether you're comfortable in the coffin. Like, you can stuff a fairly big person into a normal-sized coffin. They don't need a ton of space. They're dead. You just have to get the lid down. I'm getting really mad over
Just like I found this in like really poor taste.
Yes.
You know, even for this movie, I was like, this is just really shitty. And why does this movie hate him so much?
So they prop the black plastic bag up in a seat on the jet with them, and he starts yelling at them from within the plastic bag at the manager and the other guy on the plane, and then the black plastic bag threatens to get off the plane.
Right, nobody cares. There's something about Mary type movie where this scene would fit right in and be very funny.
Yeah.
Right? Like a Farrelly Brothers or someone like that could pull this off. But you're right. It's a biopic that hates its subject and tears him down at every possible moment. And depicts him as like this very famous beloved guy in an industry where people hate each other, but then gives no reason why anyone should like the guy or find him funny.
Yeah. It's so mean-spirited. I don't understand why even bother make this if you're going to hate your subject matter this much. And also, like, if you're going to reduce John Belushi to look at this gross guy who did too many drugs and ate so much, he's so gross. Look at him eating a sandwich when he's dead, and look at his ass hanging out of this hospital gown, and watch him ride around in a cab. It's not even like an even keeled look at him, or like a balanced look, or, you know, or like something that takes into account the complexities of being a human. It's just, you know, to use the word that all the reviews use, it's hostile towards its subject matter, and it doesn't even bother to give us a way in. It's like they use him as a prop to lecture us about the evils of drugs for 2 hours, and to let us see Bob Woodward do reporting, like when he's in the Chateau Marmont scene where he says, as he's walking through the room, I wrote it down because it was so good, he looks around and he's like, patio, sliding doors. And as he's
patio,
looking,
sliding doors.
I was like, bravo, that is the reporting a presidency. Why make this if it's gonna like just be such a hateful portrait of him? And
nothing in this movie made sense. I mean, like,
no,
the comedy was bad. The comedy within the comedy, because they couldn't use the real SNL sketches, was bad. That's the point where you just suck it up and hire real comedy writers to write the sketches within sketches. You just like have people say, wow, that guy's hilarious on SNL, and then just that's the end of it, you know? Talking about 30 Rock, at least the sketches within the show were intentionally, like, you're supposed to get the idea that nobody on that show was good at their job.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like here, you're being told everyone on the show is great at their job. And you don't see, instead you get a fucking doctor sketch where a guy impersonating Dan Aykroyd, impersonating Groucho Marx, playing a doctor. It just, none of it was good. I mean,
no, and then they show the corpse makes good on its threat to jump out of the plane.
Yeah.
The corpse makes good on its threat to jump out of the plane by jumping out of the plane and then crashing through the ceiling of a bar through the roof of the building where Woodward is interviewing Dan Aykroyd, and there's a pinball machine, and Roger Daltrey isn't there. And no one could have saved us from this movie.
Doesn't Dan Aykroyd literally say, I'm at the blues bar being interviewed by Bob Woodward right now? Did I imagine that? Like, isn't he on the phone like, I can't talk, I'm in the blues bar, I'm being interviewed by Bob Woodward about John Belushi.
Oh, I hate this movie. It just keeps going. Like, I just kind of want to skip through like the last 30 minutes of this. I made a note here that I was like, we haven't seen Angel in a while, and that's okay.
And then they play a ballad. They play a ballad over a montage of the hearse being driven over dunes in what is supposed to be Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket. Like
Right.
everything else in this movie, it just looks like a bad version of what it's supposed to be. And then he has a scene with the manager where the manager says, "You can't tell me not to love you." And like, I disagree. Like this version of John Belushi can very much tell me not to love him. I don't love him. I don't want to love him. I want him to hurry up and die already, except that this movie is happening from the afterlife and I'm still stuck watching it. So I guess that death won't solve anything.
No, it's
Yeah.
well, and
And
there's the Bergman parody where they play pinball, which I didn't realize it was a Bergman parody. I had to
didn't
read that.
either.
I didn't either.
Because it's
Yeah.
so terrible.
And it makes no sense, and it doesn't work with anything else in the movie.
No. And
No.
I feel like it was an interesting choice to show a consequential pinball game and then never show the game itself.
I wanted to see what a pinball game based on the life of John Belushi would look like. Even within this movie where it's like lying to me and I'm sure it would have been torture. Like it would have just been a bad set piece like every other set piece.
The fact
And
that
then
you
we-
wanted an insert shot to make that scene longer is crazy.
Yeah. But
You're right. You're totally
Yeah.
right.
But it's a real interesting choice, not unlike in Cats when they shoot all the dancing from the waist up, because obviously you don't want to see feet moving when you're watching a dance movie. Now we're
Well-
back in the Chateau Homewood Suites.
More like the Chateau Marmont.
Yeah.
The Motel 6 Marmont, but
Yeah,
like again, you can't name a chain because it looks like the sixth degree off brand of any chain you name.
Yes.
The Chateau Motel.
Yes.
Ugh.
Oh, it's so sad. And Belushi's dying from the speedball that was slowly, painstakingly injected into his arm for like 25 minutes. And Bob Woodward is standing over him. This must be what happens when you're going to hell. The last thing you see when you die is J.T. Walsh, is Bob Woodward
Right.
standing over you, judging you, saying, "You did this to yourself."
Wait, doesn't he go to hell in this
I
movie?
have no
Yeah, I
idea, but he does yell back at him, "I can't breathe. Breathe for me, Woodward."
Like,
I think it's implied he goes to hell.
I didn't pick up on that.
Bob Woodward's like yelling at him, like, "How dare you stick needles in your arm when you hate needles?" And like, I don't know if he actually said that or if I just made that up, but I was furious
Yeah.
that this movie ended with him standing over dying John Belushi saying, "You did this to yourself." I thought that was like, I was like, how in the world is that a good idea?
Well, it's shitty reporting. You're supposed to try to be impartial.
He's too busy being like, patio, chair, lamp.
You're right. He's too busy naming furniture.
I have no skin in this game in terms of like, John Belushi isn't my favorite. I've enjoyed his work. I'm not like a stan of his, but I found that so offensive to end with that. Just to end with like someone telling him how, like, basically like he deserved this.
Also, can we talk about the fact that Kathy Smith allowed her name to be used in this?
I wonder if like like the fact that she's in the public record. No.
No, because we don't get a Lorne Michaels.
Oh, good point.
We don't ever.
She also might not have had the resources to sue.
Or she might have. They might have given her a little bit of money.
And that, yeah, because she actually did time for this.
She did time for it. She's since gone on to be the "I killed John Belushi" person. Like she does kind of very happily talk about it.
That's weird.
She might be a little not a great person.
I reserve the right to change my mind, but that is not a good opening salvo for her character in terms of how I will look at her as a human.
No, I mean, she also describes herself as a groupie. She might have a different moral center than you do.
In terms of like names they couldn't use, there's also, he refers offhand to two other members of the SNL cast as they signed contracts at one point are referred to. And I don't know, was Gilda Radner, whose name he says dead by the time they made the movie?
Yes.
Yes.
89?
So that's why he could say Gilda Radner.
I don't think
know.
he said her full name, did he? I thought he just said Chevy
He refers
Gilda.
Huh. Okay. Because they refer to like two other I don't want to watch this again to find out.
Well,
No,
he
no,
was
it's
also
fine.
he also was writing that screenplay in the scene with Wynn Duffy with a guy who's supposed to be Tom Davis, but they changed Tom Davis's name. Tom Davis was the guy who's also really been through the addiction, openly been through the addiction. Like Al Franken talks about how he used to go to these 12-step meetings with Tom Davis, and that's how he came up with the Stuart Smalley character.
Oh,
Um, he really went through it with him, and so I think it's interesting that like even Tom Davis was like, I don't want my name anywhere near this movie.
Freud had to do was say no, and they would have only had the names Judith Belushi and Bob Woodward,
Uh,
and they would have had to pull the plug. Just if one more person to say no on putting their
Wish they
name
had
on
pulled
it.
the plug on this because it's
I would love to know
So
how they got
bad.
to recreate an Animal House scene
yeah.
because because that seemed, and they named the movie, so like I guess someone at a studio gave them the permission to do that.
I found out in researching this that Soul Man was co-written by Isaac Hayes.
The movie or the
The
song?
song,
Oh
the
shit!
song, and I did say that the song Soul Man's use in this movie is the second worst thing that happened to it in the 80s.
But it wasn't any better than the Blues Brothers version.
Speaking of things that went through the ringer,
Well, how about the fact that Billy Preston plays himself?
oh, I didn't even clock that.
I think this is the now I have to look it up. I want to be 100% sure. I I think this is the bad movie where Billy Preston plays himself at the end. I want to say that's true. Right? Because someone was singing a song at the look. This is how bad this movie was that I genuinely can't tell you if that scene was in this movie or in another movie. Yes, he was singing "You're So Beautiful to Me" as Joe Cocker. That's right, and
Yeah.
that's Billy Preston at
Yeah.
the piano
Oh, I didn't know
playing his
that.
that he co-wrote.
I mean, that was, I think, I didn't love watching him do an imitation of John Belushi doing an imitation of Joe Cocker, but I thought that was like the closest this movie got to having any sort of heart.
Right.
See, I did not feel like that at all. I felt like that is like covering a mentally disabled naked child in paint and pointing at them and laughing.
Well, I'm not saying they pulled it off. I am saying that it felt like they were trying to like get at the soul of him as a performer. I am not saying they were successful or that it was anything other than what you just described. But it felt like the most sincere thing that happened in this film. At least something sincere to John Belushi. And maybe it's also because that song is so lovely and heartfelt.
I will say Chickless in that scene did a really good job of just embodying what John Belushi did as a performer and why people who watched SNL found him like electric, right? Like genuinely Chickless did a really great job of capturing that side of John Belushi.
It
They
was,
do this after 2 hours of dedicating the film to telling us what an asshole he
yeah,
is.
Yeah.
it's weird. It's like it's part of another movie, or
It,
like they filmed it first and then they were like, fuck that, let's make this mean. It feels sort of out of place because it does feel like the first time this movie isn't being a real dick to all of us. I don't know how to describe it because again, I don't think it 100% like sticks the landing by any stretch, but it feels like the first time the movie is trying to show us him as a human and not as sort of like like the Hamburglar for cocaine.
I mean, but this is why it is unfortunately so important to have the cooperation of the people
Oh,
in the movie, like that Saturday Night Live movie that Jason Reitman released last year was not my favorite movie about comedy, but because it was made with the permission of everyone involved who was still with us and the estates of everyone who had passed on, you at least got to see what it was about that show and what it was about that cast that made people really, like, in 1976 sit up and pay attention, and why, like, people would stay home at 11:30 at night instead of going out and partying with their friends, to watch, like Paul McCartney and John Lennon watched that show together. Like, everybody watched that show who was cool. And the version of everybody in this movie, you wouldn't understand that. But because it's made
No.
in 89, and this everything was in such recent memory, they kind of took for granted, like, okay, you know what SNL is. We don't have to explain it to you. We'll just give you, like, a facsimile, and that you get what we're going for.
When you say facsimile, you mean plywood.
That last scene is the only time, and again, because it involves an impression which is public domain, and a song which they clearly, like you said, that's where the money went. Like, they could really just do it, and they did it. By the way, that was not a great decision, but they did it beginning to end. And it's like, okay, well, I get, like, okay, this is Belushi, the performer that everyone loved.
I'm assuming there's a good story to be told about John Belushi's life and legacy, and to share. There's obviously much more to him as a human, and it deserves proper attention. I don't necessarily know that that's like another biopic, or that's more like in an ensemble story, because also, like, a lot of this story is very similar to what we see in half the movies we do, which is someone's like trucking along and everything's great, and then they pick up drugs and die.
Have you seen JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling? Have you guys done
No.
an episode about
No.
that? It's the Richard Pryor biopic that he wrote and directed and starred in.
Oh,
And he starred in it. Next time I'm on the show, let's do that, because
okay.
that's another
Yeah.
version of this story that's not done great, but it's like done with a real understanding of what comedy is and what comedy people are. And this movie had no understanding of what comedy is.
Yeah.
No. No, nor does Bob Woodward.
Right. Again, Bob Woodward was an establishment Republican, and this was like right after the height of the Just Say No era. You were never going to get a sympathetic portrayal of cocaine and heroin use out of this movie.
No.
So
And I guess though too, I have empathy for addicts. And I think a lot of people do. And I think that one of the things that biopics do, like, even though we see some of the same narrative arcs, like, I think that it's really important for people to see the universal nature of addiction. And I felt like this movie was like shaming him as an addict, and also by extent like shaming like being addicted and struggling with that stuff, and acting as if like why don't you just stop? It's just like such an uncompassionate look at being an addict, and also the people around an addict who are trying to help them or are enabling them or are struggling themselves. And yeah, I just hated this. I hated it.
it is so bad. And like Sarah, I think the three worst movies we've seen were The Conqueror, Tennessee Johnson, and Parnell.
Mm-hmm.
How does this rank up with those?
Oh, it's worse. I mean, Parnell is. Those are all awful movies, but like all of them had a narrative flow that could make like that I could make sense of.
And at least in Parnell, it had like pretty costumes.
Like this movie is kind of like a next level in bad, because also narratively it made no sense, and structurally it made no sense. Like all of those movies follow a traditional story arc of a script.
Well,
And
this movie is like the turducken that ate Hollywood.
I don't know what I just watched, but like even like the worst movies I've seen, like, thinking about like The Room or Manos, The Hand of Fate, or like anything, like anything like classically bad, like they follow general story beats.
Right.
So does
Like there's rules that they follow. This movie doesn't follow any of those rules.
Yeah,
This
I
is
mean,
chaos.
I took a screenplay structure class, which was one of the most interesting classes I've ever taken. And you learn about like what makes a traditionally good screenplay work. Screenplays have universal things like 3 acts, but within those 3 acts, you have X number of sequences, and there's rising action, and it's like, like you think like, oh, these rules are so dumb, and like, why do you have to obey them? And we just kind of like deconstructed North by Northwest and Finding Nemo and like all these different kind of movies, and just saw how like all these really great movies kind of like follow these rules, right? And so like one of the things that I was saying 3 hours ago about Earl Mac Roush was the dude makes movies that do not follow these rules, right? And it's like one of the reasons why like Bonzru Buckeye is so special is because it just follows no rules of narrative structure, right? And it's like this movie follows no rules. It wants to jump around like a Vonnegut novel, like go back in time and forward in time and have the character die and then revisit his life, and then he's interacting with people but he's not, and like he can't get new clothes but he can get a cheeseburger. Like it just like kind of wants to like play with time and reality, but it does it very incompetently.
Comparing this to a Vonnegut novel, like, yes, that is a good comparison. And it's like, there's a reason that Vonnegut novels don't make good movies.
Right. Or I'll say Slaughterhouse-Five was a great movie, but it was because George Roy Hill is a genius and he knew how to
Yes.
he knew how to take liberties in the right ways, right? I just realized I have nothing else to say about Wired.
Yeah,
Such a terrible
I
movie.
don't either. I don't think we had anything more to say about it 3 hours ago. It's
I would
awful.
love to talk to you about Slaughterhouse-Five and why it works and why it doesn't, but it's
I
like,
would too.
But it's also not a biopic. Sarah, do
No.
we have any
Sorry.
awards talk this week?
Of course we don't.
Of course we don't. And my one note under this was hardy har, har har, har har. My favorite line of dialogue in this movie was, "I'll get you, Woodward, if it's the last thing I ever do." Sarah, can you please give our listeners a refresher about how we score movies?
Sure. We rate movies on a 1 to 10 scale across 10 areas that we find to be subjectively and or objectively important to most films, but specially tailored to issues particular to biopics. If you want more details on how we score movies, please scroll down our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com. You'll also find a record of our scores for past episodes there. And with that out of the way, let's score this thing.
I wanted to say this movie was worse than what I have previously called the worst biopic I've ever seen, which is Walt Before Mickey. And I have been saving Walt Before Mickey because my fantasy that I want to manifest for this show is that we will do an episode with at least one guest who is a host of How Did This Get Made to talk about Walt Before Mickey. But this was worse than Walt Before Mickey. That movie is so bad, and this was worse. So, my scores for Wired were...
drum roll, please.
So for outward appearances, makeup and hair, I gave it a 3. I was being too nice. For acting and casting, I gave it 0.5 for the woman who plays Patty D'Arbanville. And actually, Chickless does kind of get Belushi's movements down in the first scene, but I'm just mad. For passage of time, I gave it a 2. I don't know why I'm being this nice. For costuming, I gave it a 3. For quality of the script, I gave it a 0. For accuracy, I gave it a 3. It is still more accurate than The Conqueror. For storytelling, I gave it a 0. For production value, I gave it a 2.5. Why am I so nice? I don't know. So my total average came to 1.4, but we have watched movies that this was worse than that got a 1.45. So with my average at 1.4, I'm using the buy, which brings our final score to 0.4, and I feel like this should be like a .215 or something. It was bad. And that .215 is for Darbenville, who is still just getting by slightly better than the rest of them are just getting by. This movie is so like if I'm breaking and laughing too much during this episode, it's this movie just makes me laugh with despair at every minute I have to endure it. And I didn't have to do it. I didn't have to do any of this. I did it to myself, just like Bob Woodward yelled at John Belushi on his deathbed.
Yeah.
Who?
Should I go?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. Outward appearances, 2. Acting and casting, 2. That's for Chickless and Patty Darbenville. Passage of time, 0. You know, I'm furious that I had no idea where we were, when we were, what was going on. Costuming, 1. I was really pissed off at the costuming because like it's so lazy, but they did get some of the SNL stuff kind of right. Quality of the script, 1. Accuracy, 2. Storytelling, now here's where I went high because I would say that if this succeeded, I would give it a 10. In storytelling, Rena's so pissed off that I'm going to ruin the... But I didn't. So I split the baby between 10 for creativity, 0 for execution, and gave it a 5. Production value, 1. Direction, it was original. I will give it that. Okay.
That was actually a lower score than you actually gave it a lower score for production value than I did. Like, I think I was way too nice about wardrobe and production value. I just have a rule about not changing the scores once we give them.
Yes. Production and direction decision making, 1. Do we care? 1. No. I don't care about any of these people in this movie, and it's upsetting because I do care about the real John Belushi. And my score came out to average of 1.6.
Did I mention that I gave it a 0 for Do We Care? I feel like I left that out because I was so eager to get done thinking about this movie, but I did give it a 0 for Do We Care.
That's okay.
Okay, so you're at 1.6.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't average mine, but also I didn't know we could give a 0. I thought it was 1 to 10.
Oh yeah, we can give it. Do you want to redo them with zeros?
Well, I'll do it on the fly.
I'll let you.
I'll do it on the fly. Don't worry. Okay. I don't think anything got a 0. I got to be honest with you. Outward appearances, makeup, hair, that's a 2. I mean, like, very weirdly made no attempt to make anyone who didn't look like the person. Acting, casting, this is where, if we're going to split scores, I would give the Chickless casting a 10 because I'll tell you what, like, the guy, his voice was kind of in and out, but he really nailed the physicality of John Belushi. The scene where, Aykroyd and Judy Belushi are at 2 a.m, they can't sleep, so they're at the dining table, and John Belushi walks in his undershirt. Looked like John Belushi. The guy gained weight to have the same belly as John Belushi. The rest of the casting, I give that a 0. So if you divide 10 by 0, that's 0. Okay, so when you average it out, it's
You're really
10,
good at that, Liam.
No, 10 plus 0 is 10. I give it a 5 then.
No, I like the idea that 10 divided by 0 is 0.
Well, it is, but isn't it? 10 multiplied by 0 is 0.
Nice.
So am I putting you down for 0 for acting? Because
No, give it a 5 because Alex Rocco did what you hire Alex Rocco to do. Jerry Burns did what you hire Jerry Burns to do. JT Walsh, it's not his fault that he was given a character that's impossible to make sympathetic. So I would give overall, I give the casting like a 5 or a 7, but Passage of Time, that is a 1. That was very confusing. And I was watching a better like version of this movie than you guys were physically. And I'll tell you, it was still like impossible to tell where you were in the story at any time. Costuming, I was really torn on costuming, and I'll tell you why. Because everything you said about like hip rich people and the way they dressed in '76, this was like the cheap version of that. But also, then they nailed like the King Bee costume, and they nailed like uh, the Blues Brothers costume. In fact, when Aykroyd was dressed up as Jake Blues, that's the only time that he looked like Dan Aykroyd to me. And the Conehead, they did it well. It's just they did it in a crazy fucking sketch that would never work in real life. Like the fuck. So I gave costuming a 6. Quality of the script, that was a 1. Accuracy, that might as well be an infinity. I have no way of telling, but I give that a 1 also. Storytelling, look, it was definitely an original way to tell the story. Like I don't even think Wired was structured the way that this movie was. But overall storytelling was a 3. Production value was a 3, and I only give it that high because they had Billy Preston playing "You Are So Beautiful to Me" at the end of the movie. That really is where the money went. Production, direction, decision making, that was a 2. Because they made by your criteria, did they make interesting choices? They made some very interesting choices. They were just all bad. The right people were not hired. This was a 2. Do we care? I got to give that a 2 also. Because again, there were individual moments that were compelling and individual moments where you're like, oh, well, this is why people were interested in Belushi, but it was mostly a recreation of the things that made Belushi famous. And they were not like the parts of his life that we're not familiar with, that the biopic kind of is supposed to like live or die on.
Okay, so I stopped writing the numbers down to average them because we have a problem here, like which is that our scoring system is usually gives an okay sense of it's usually very good for like pointing out when a film is mediocre or why 7 is better than 5, and most of the time people give things 7s when they mean 5 because they're being nice. But you've just like created a whole case about things where our scoring system doesn't is highly flawed because this movie sucks. It's torture. No one should watch it. It's worse by at least a point than the worst things we've ever seen. So I think we should just say that I think we should just give this movie a 0.215, like I said, leaving room for something worse to come along, and leave it at that and move along into second opinion.
Can I just make a case for this is maybe out of the box thinking? Call it pi. 3.14 I think is very comfortable leaving it at pi
But
and letting that trail into infinity.
The problem is that we've had movies that were really terrible that this would beat, that this was worse than.
I'm glad I saw this movie. Here's the thing.
Huh.
I've seen terrible movies where I'm like, fuck, I'll never get the 2 hours of my life. I watched Norbit, right? I regret watching
God.
Norbit. This movie was bad in a way that most movies are not bad. I was genuinely like, kind of like, wow, I'm glad I sat through this one time. I'll never do it again.
I would never do it again. Like, The Conqueror was outsider art, not doing it again. Tennessee Johnson makes you furious at America.
We watched Ed Wood, right? We talked about it. Plan 9 from Outer Space is outsider art. And in the same way that Wired is outsider art, but made by Hollywood insiders. It's nuts.
I don't think this is outsider art. I need to find some criteria for sticking this movie with the lowest score we're ever going to give.
I'm not going to argue.
Can we just give this a 0?
Sure.
So that it can have the honor of being. I think in terms of that everything is designed so that we can give 10s but can't give 0s just to give people credit. Maybe the special notoriety it deserves is to be our only 0.
I mean, look, whatever this movie did well or didn't do, it's incredibly slimy. And for that alone, it deserves a 0.
I agree. Okay, so we're all... Liam, you don't mind that you went to the trouble of giving scores and I was a bitch and ignored them because I had my own narrative?
I don't give a fuck.
You just ignored my scores too. It's fine.
I did ignore your scores too. I was pissed that
Yes.
you didn't use the buy.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm being a bitch and a control freak, and that's how much I fucking hate this movie.
I thought a 1.6 was a pretty bad review.
Yeah, but we've given things lower scores. Like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm a horrible person. No one should ever want to do this show again. This should just be me talking to the wall next time.
No, let's not do that. That sounds weird.
Okay. Okay. So I'm giving this a 0. It's going to be the only 0 we ever give. And that can be its specialness that recognizes some of the semi-merits that were pointed out.
What an honor to be part of a historic episode.
Okay. So with a 0, congratulations, Wired. You have qualified for second opinion.
Congratulations, Wired.
What's second opinion?
Oh boy. So, second opinion is the element we stole from How Did This Get Made?
Second opinion is if a film get the prize for scoring above an 8 or below a 4, is that you get to hear us make fun of IMDb reviewers who disagreed with our assessment of the film. And we stole this from How Did This Get Made? So I could only find 2 good reviews for this movie on IMDb, both of which were rather long. And normally I pick ones that are like maybe 10 sentences tops. So I thought, let's take turns reading the paragraphs.
Okay.
So I'll start with 10 out of 10. Very disturbing yet excellent movie.
What?
Written by Jesse Rides 2000 on September 25th of 2005. This is 3 paragraphs. I'll read the first. Liam, you read the second, and Sarah can read the third. So it begins. I disagree 100% with the previous review of this film. I saw this movie when it came out, and it was not only an incredible film, but also an incredible acting debut from the soon-to-be-famous S.H.I.E.L.D. star Michael Chiklis. Rumor has it that he was said to be blackballed by the Belushi, in quotes, camp for doing this film because of the too true for comfort portrayal of Mr. Belushi. I don't know if there is any truth to that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it were true. Sure, and it wouldn't surprise me if the moon were made of green cheese. That's my... Liam, your turn.
Okay, I see. I'm sorry. Calling this an anti-drug propaganda movie like it's a bad thing is absurd. I would define it as a true-to-the-life view of the rise and fall of a entertainment icon due to addiction. Not that unbelievable of a storyline now, is it? Well, no, it's a true story. I mean, it's public record.
If you like good movies that deal with real subjects, you will like this film. If you are a diehard John Belushi fan who can't face a glimpse of a highly probable truth about the man, go ahead and watch Animal House instead. Well,
he's wrong.
Or she.
Or she.
We don't know.
I think this movie best exists as a movie you can't see, but you hear about how terrible it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's quite awful.
Oh, it's dreadful.
And
so bad.
Unenjoyable.
But I'll tell you what, if any of your listeners want to watch this movie for themselves, they can email me at liam@heyitsliam.com and I will rip the bootleg I bought. Because I paid $20 to get it, and that is too much.
We paid $18 for a copy of Tennessee Johnson because we'd rather not let Russians get in our computers.
Yes. I don't even know what Tennessee Johnson is, but
it's a movie about Andrew Johnson that makes him look like a hero.
I think we were talking about this the last time I was on your show.
No, you were on right before we did that movie.
Okay.
We might have been talking about how we were about to do it.
Okay.
It's
quite
bad. It's quite bad.
Yeah, it is. But it's actually available on HBO Max. We paid 18. Yeah, we paid $18 for it and then they put it on HBO Max. This happens all the time, that we talk about a movie that we have to go to all kinds of lengths to see a copy of, and then it shows up on streaming.
It's because we're talking about it.
I've got an all-region Blu-ray player, and I spent a lot of money to get this obscure Czechoslovakian comedy that I'd heard a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it, and then the next week it was on the Criterion Channel.
Of course it was. What movie was it?
It's got the word cat in the title, and it's really good. It's worth. Well, you know what? It's worth owning. Fuck it. Yeah, that happens to me quite a bit.
All right.
Or I'll really want to see a movie and I can't find it, and then it's available streaming 2 weeks later, and I'm like, too late.
Yeah.
So, other stuff that you should watch instead. Watch the Coffin Flops sketch from I Think You Should Leave. The first 5 seasons of SNL, Animal House, The Blues Brothers, but honestly, like, even The Doors, even The Conqueror are more watchable. And Sarah, I think, I remember back in the Tennessee Johnson episode, when we got to this part of that episode, you mentioned that there is a dark web out there with snuff porn on it that people might want to consider watching instead of Tennessee Johnson. I don't know if I can speak to that about something I haven't seen. I don't know how this compares to snuff porn.
I want to be 100% clear here. I have never been there. I have heard about it. So I've never been to the dark web.
No, of course.
But I've heard about it.
Here's a metric of how bad Wired was. It's not available on Tubi.
Oh, yeah.
And when we agreed to do this movie, I thought for sure it would be on Tubi.
This not being on Tubi is a demonstration of its true awfulness.
There's a movie on Tubi where literally they keep in the part where they end the take, the director gives the actors direction, and then they do another take. When Wired is not on Tubi, it's not a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to put it up on Tubi just to put it up on Tubi.
You probably
so people
could.
Can watch it. Yeah.
Because why wouldn't they allow you to do that?
The production company's clearly not doing anything with it.
I'll get you Woodward if it's the last thing I ever do.
I mean, and this is money that could go to the Isaac Hayes estate every time someone watches it.
It's money
wouldn't it then go to Scientology?
Good point. This is money that can go to the Joe Cocker estate. I don't think he was involved in any problematic religious sex.
Okay.
Yeah, this is money that could go to the Chickless.
Yeah. The Chickless College Fund.
Yeah. It's his kids, everybody's got to eat, right?
Everybody's got to eat. Everybody's got to pay for college. Everyone has to replace a roof.
Yeah.
Let's help him out.
I'm going to put this movie up on my YouTube channel.
Amazing.
I'm serious. I'm going to put it up because there needs to be a better quality version of this movie out there. So I'll rip it. By the time you're listening to this episode, just go to youtube.com, pop culture dumpster, and it'll be up there.
Oh my gosh, we're so linking to that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'll do that. I have to rip it and upload it, so I'll do that this week. I have all kinds of movies that are, not otherwise readily available on my YouTube channel.
Aren't you worried you'll get sued? What if Dan Aykroyd sues you?
No, because what happens is eventually sometimes there's a lot of movies where companies don't know they have the rights. And so they're just not out there, or they're only available on the Internet Archive where you got this. And so, it's like sometimes MGM finds out that they have the rights to a movie and they want to upload it themselves, and they just issue a takedown notice, and YouTube just takes it down and lets you know. And then sometimes there are companies that actually specialize in falsely claiming to have the copyright on public domain movies, and they issue takedown notices. And the minute you fight it, they let go because they know that they'll lose their YouTube channel and their income. It's nuts.
Yeah.
The world of YouTube is actually pretty nuts. I mean, it's not like the dark web like you like to watch snuff films on, but it's pretty. Sarah told me it's for Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the family pack, so everyone can sign into my account. I have like 10 seats on it. So yeah, it's logged across my family. Everyone's logged into it.
Fantastic.
So this is, I would say though that in its own elegant way, this is a snuff film. But I mean, I think we name checked any number of other things you should watch instead throughout this episode. One battle after another, all that jazz. The Shield, Tommy Boy, Animal House, The Blues Brothers. Read Go Ask Alice, better, more realistic portrayal of someone on drugs, and she's selling LSD to 9-year-olds in 2 months after she tries marijuana. Yeah, no, totally. And and I'm still reading The Power Broker, which is amazing.
I'm going to say, if you're tempted to watch this movie, watch What About Bob?
Yeah.
Co-directed by Bill Murray, very funny, real captures New York in a way a lot of movies don't. I recommend What About Bob instead of Wired.
I like that. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah.
It's a really good recommendation. That's a lovely movie and funny. Literally anything else, because this is, I think,
Agreed.
the worst movie I've ever seen.
How was Manos the Hands of Fate better than this movie, Sarah?
It follows a storyline.
Look, it was on Mystery Science Theater 3000, which the first time I watched that, I drank a lot of NyQuil, and then I watched it, and it became a real struggle to stay awake.
It's not good.
No, it's not. It's actually worse than this movie. I'll give Wired this. It's more watchable than Manos.
That's probably true.
It was made by professionals.
The costumes. I like the costumes better in Manos.
Yeah.
You know what? Seriously, there's a show out here in LA called Tubi Roulette, and I would say better to play Tubi Roulette at home and just randomly find anything to watch, because there's so many great old movies that you could watch instead of Wired.
I would watch The Conqueror again before I'd watch Wired.
I mean, Kroll is out there. It's don't watch Wired. I'll have it on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. I'm just saying I won't be mad if you don't make it through the movie.
So do we have any retractions, apologies, or omissions this week, Sarah?
No.
Fantastic. Okay. Liam, thank you so much for doing the show with us. We're sorry this went so long. We're sorry we watched this movie. We're sorry you watched this movie for us. We're not sorry we got to talk to you again.
No
regrets.
Thank you so much.
I was serious. Let's do it again and watch JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling. Which
Sounds good. Yeah.
I think you'll have it's not a great movie, but you'll have a better time. It's in the Criterion collection, so it can't be bad. But yeah.
It'll at least have its quirky little pluses, like everything there, even the weird stuff.
It's a Romana Clef, so it might not fit strictly within the bounds of your podcast. So think about it.
I mean, we just broke some rules so we could give this the 0 it deserved. So have a great night.
Yes.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, Sarah.
I will sign us out.
All right. Can you please take us out?
Sure. A couple of notes here. Our podcast baby has matured into a toddler, and we have launched a Patreon, simply an effort to defray some of the costs associated with bringing our show to you. Platform hosting costs, recording, equipment, and research, and occasionally we have to order a book off the internet. We also sometimes have to pay for movie rentals, and sometimes we may want to see a movie in theaters, or we have to pay for transit to see each other and record in the same place at the same time. We are offering shout-outs and access to our awful first 3 episodes to anyone who chips in for us. And with that, we'd love to thank Brandon and Gates for signing up.
Thank you, Brandon and Gates.
Thank you. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends, and share us on social media. We hear it helps. You can follow us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, where we have visual aids from our episodes. Our Instagram handle is @Biopic a Podcast Story, so do check us out there. and we'll link to that in our show notes as well. Please also check out our webpage at Biopic, a podcast story.podbean.com to see the official episode ratings for all of the movies that we've done so far. Our theme music is by Ben Patch. The intro is his song Slater Cannonball, and the outro is Spring Breakers, and you can check him out on Spotify.
Tune in next time when we'll be talking about, well, life has gotten a little hectic. You may notice that our episodes are coming out less frequently and not quite on a schedule, and it's because I landed my dream job and Sarah wrote a book. Thank you for discovering us or for sticking with us, and we love you all, and good night to the earnest and the cynical.
Good night, and good night, Rena.
Good night, Sarah, and thank you again to our wonderful guest, Liam.
Yes, thank you, Liam, so much. And all of his info will be in our show notes, and check him out in all the places.
Good night, Sarah.
Good night.
Good night.